Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening. Really depends when you're actually listening to this podcast. I should explain, I'm Phil Seeva, and I am the host of this podcast, which is called Fueling Growth. It's brought to you by our good friends at Fuel, who are a full-service marketing agency based in Plymouth. And the idea behind the podcast really is that over the next sort of few weeks, months, whenever, we'll be hosting a few other people coming in. But today, first of all, we couldn't go much further without talking to two of the people that are involved in Fuel. That is Martyn King and Steve Gyseman, who have joined me here. And I'm going to say studio, but actually it's not really a studio. It's your office. Let's pretend it's the studio, shall we? So welcome to your podcast, gentlemen.
Thank you, Phil. Honoured.
Yes.
Honoured to kick it off.
I love that start.
Yeah.
And thank you, Phil. And yes, it's our office. It's our staff room.
Yeah, well, yeah, and we've had coffee. It's taken us a bit of time to set up today, but we've got there, and we're ready.
We're ready to go.
This is it. I mean, we've been talking about podcasts now for a while, let's be fair, and it has been on the agenda. And we first talked about it during lockdown some time ago, but actually it's come back on the agenda and we have finally got it. So I'm pleased that we are here. And it's a lovely day out here in Plymouth, so I'm pleased to be here. Now, a couple of things, just a bit of housekeeping. As I said, the general idea is that this may well become a series. That depends whether it's any good and whether people at home have listened to it and like it and feedback and say they want more of it, which would be fantastic. But also... the thing that we do want to talk about, the focus is not necessarily you as a business, but it is indeed about growth as a whole, hence the name Fueling Growth. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Yes, today it's you two, but in actual fact, going forward, I think we're talking about you bringing in clients and anyone else that may be of interest. It may not even be in sort of the marketing sector at all. It may be in other sectors that we just want to talk about growth, because at the end of the day, I think, considering the couple of years that we've just had, I think it's probably fair that growth is going to be one of the most important things going forward.
No, I think that's totally right, Phil. And it is our intention to broaden it out if we're any good today. But I think it's probably important to point out that actually the name Fuel come from us as owners and coming together to kick off the agency. But the name Fuel come from fueling growth for clients. That was the key insight. That's where the name come from. So it was always growth from the word go, and back in 2008, which is a really interesting year to talk about growth, because we started just after the financial crash, which was interesting. And our biggest client at the time was quite a big financial services provider. So it was a baptism of fire, and it's been growth ever since.
Well, we think it's a really interesting topic because growth can take so many forms, and so many different angles to it. So we thought, as it's what we do for a living, as Martyn just explained, but also a lot of interesting topics that we can cover just talking about the realm of growth.
I mean, look, one thing I will say as well is that the idea behind the podcast is it's going to be about 15 to 20 minutes, not more than that. So it's nice and easy to digest, download and listen to it in your car, listen to it on social media, etc., on your way to work. But what I would like to do today is start with something very simple. This isn't an ad for the company, but it's important that we find out a little bit about you, a bit of background as well. So, Steve, you can take a back seat for a minute, although feel free to chip in. And Martyn, I'd like you to take us through, if possible, a little bit of history, couple of minutes on a bit of history on the background to Fuel and what it's all about. Is you okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
And Steve, I've got something much more telling for you after.
I look forward to that, Phil.
I'm sure my business partner will fill in the gaps. He's used to doing that constantly. So, but as I said, we when we started in 2008, it was all about fueling growth for clients. But what I think is quite interesting is the difference between what that looked like back in 2008. I think fueling growth back in 2008 looked a lot in terms of numbers. So, how much revenue you're doing, how much profit you're doing, that kind of stuff. It's pretty transactional type stuff. Whereas growth today is very different. I'm sure we'll talk about that a lot more in a minute. In terms of Fuel's journey along that way, we've grown, we've dipped, we've grown again, and we're growing really consistently year on year. I suppose, in terms of sort of milestones, if you like, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, Steve and I looked to add to the business in some way. So how do we become something that's bigger and has more services for our clients to enable them to grow beyond what you would call a traditional marketing agency? Yeah. So a few years ago, we got into the affiliate marketing space and grew our e-commerce our e-commerce client base. And then pretty soon after that, we looked at ways in which we could grow even further. So we got into the immersive space by acquiring an immersive agency, which has been really cool. Add loads of strings to our bow there. Yeah. And then shortly after that, we merged with another digital agency, which gave us a lot more depth. Yeah. And therefore just really set us up for what we feel is a sort of compelling skill set to help our clients grow. Interesting how our growth has been both organic, but also through mergers and acquisitions too.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can only speak as I find, and I've known you guys for, well, the company's been around for sort of 12 years, and I think I've known you for about 10 of those. And I've been very fortunate enough. You invite me to your Christmas party as well. And every year, and I say this all the time, every year I come to your Christmas party, there are more and more people that I just don't know who they are because they've just added to over the year. And
the bar bill gets bigger as well.
Sorry?
The bar bill gets a lot bigger as well.
Sure, it does. I apologise. I'll behave next year. That gives us a good insight into where the business has been, the journey it's been on. And and I think it's fair. There's a very definite connection between what you do and growth as a whole. I think that's probably quite true. And also, just quickly, now you're not predominantly just Plymouth based. It is a much wider spread of clients.
No, good point, Phil. So in terms of our client base, we still have local and regional clients, but of course we do that out of our office in the Midlands as well. So we're set up in the incubation facility in Birmingham City University, which is a fantastic facility, and we're really excited about the growth prospects there, of course. But in terms of a client base, regional, national, and we're handling international campaigns for clients too. So,
and just quickly before we hand over to Steve, who's got to have come up with a really good answer by now because we've given him a good 2 or 3 minutes.
He's had ages.
He's had time. But in terms of what makes the company unique, and I'm asking that question because I think I've got an answer as well, but I'd like to hear your answer as well. What makes Fuel unique?
Steve or me?
Either one of you. I don't mind. It won't be as good as my answer.
Well, let's see.
I think our approach is pretty unique. I think, as Martyn said, I don't want to cover everything Martyn said, but we formed the company in 2008 to fuel growth for clients, and it's always been at the heart of what we do. How we do it has changed. I think over the years, both by offering a wider range of services to clients. But obviously through volume, offering more services to more clients as well. So I think that's changed, and I think in terms of the range of offer is very wide. We have a lot of in-house capability, more in-house capability, I would say, than many other agencies. We do a lot of different things.
No, I think that's fair.
And a lot of different touch points, so we can help clients in a number of different ways.
I mean, to be honest, you often find an agency, they're very, very good at one thing, but they say they're a full marketing agency, and they're actually not.
We've partnered with some of those agencies, and they are really fantastic at what they do. Our business model is slightly different. As I say, we work with the client, we underpin a strategy with the client, and we bring in expertise, a lot of it in-house at Fuel, which is great, into that business to help that business grow.
Well, can I give you my answer?
Yeah, go on.
My answer is very different, and I think it's an answer that you would probably not say yourself for obvious reasons when I say it. And I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but a couple of weeks ago I was at a wedding in Devon, which was your wedding, Steve, and you were getting married to the wonderful Helen, which I think we should rename her the wonderful Helen. I think that's fair. And in fact, I sat next to your wife, didn't I, Martyn? So at dinner. But what was interesting about that is something that came out of it, because Martyn, you were Steve's best man.
Yep.
And apart from the odd technical glitch, which we'll gloss over,
do that.
It was an incredible day. It was a lovely day. But what came out of that for me was that you two have probably the tightest business bromance I've ever seen. And actually, you work well together. You're very different characters, and I think that's why the business is as successful as it is. Is that? I'm not asking for an approval on that comment. That's what I think.
That's mighty kind of you.
It's very interesting. Yeah, and thank you for saying
different.
that.
You work very well together. Is that fair?
I wouldn't disagree with that.
There you go.
And we did touch on that in some of our wedding speeches, but
I have to say the wedding speeches, some of them were a bit businesslike. There's a lot about. I couldn't work.
What would you expect?
You couldn't get away from.
Well, I had to do a bit of perception research on who Steve Gyseman really is, didn't I? That was
also, there were potential clients in the room. It was
always working, Phil. Always approaching growth.
Now, Steve, you've been warmed up now. This is your opportunity. Thank you for that, Martyn, giving us a bit of background on the company. Steve, I want to move on to growth now. Mm-hmm. So I'm keen to have this as an open conversation between the three of us. Things like what is growth? Why is it important? Why is it so important right now, considering where we've been for a few years? And you know, what's it all about? Because let's talk growth. So give us a bit of insight into growth and why it's important.
For sure. Okay, growth is obviously super important for any business, and as I think we said earlier, it can take many forms. Fundamentally, if you speak to most businesses, the kind of growth that they will want to see is growth in sales, growth in profits, and we're very akin to that, very alive to that. So we put that at the heart of our business as well, and we are very return on investment driven. So we're there to make sure that whatever campaigns we're running or whatever we're executing, are we growing? Are we fueling growth for the client? Are they getting more sales? Are they getting more clients? Are we improving the bottom line? Because if we're not doing that, in most cases we're not doing our job properly.
I'm smirking slightly because our team will wholeheartedly embrace Steve's view there that we're constantly saying, are we doing this or aren't we doing it? And that's the ultimate measurement.
It is really what drives us forward. So you take one area of growth. We do a lot of in the e-commerce space. So Martyn alluded to our affiliate marketing program. We're super confident about growth to the point if we're not fueling growth, if we're not generating those sales, if we're not reaching out to those additional customers, we do not charge the client any money. Through web tracking, things are very easy for us to.
It's a bit more transparent these days.
It's completely transparent, and we can see the output of our actions. So through an affiliate marketing program, we can track exactly how many additional sales and how many additional new clients we have managed to achieve for that client in any given week, month, day, whatever it may be. Now, we will charge a commission to the client on those sales we've achieved, and nothing else. We don't charge a fee. We don't charge a management fee. We work with a network that follows our billing process and don't charge a management fee or anything like that. So fundamentally, through those affiliate channels, if any client doesn't make a sale, it doesn't cost them anything. But we're not doing it so it doesn't cost. Clients want to receive a nice invoice from us because that means we've achieved a lot of success for our clients. It's very transparent, it's very trackable, and it's a confident business model to say, we're not going to charge you for our time. We will charge you for success.
I think in a way, for me, I mean, I've been in the industry now for quite some time. And when I first started in the industry, there was this old story about, you could take a horse to water, but you couldn't make it drink. Whereas these days, someone described it recently to me, you know exactly how much that horse is drinking now. And that's what you need to monitor. And that's how you keep an eye on growth. I also had a client at the time, back in the day, a wonderful guy called Paul Strzelecki. I'll never forget him. And his dad, Henry Strzelecki, started Henry Lloyd, the menswear fashion brand. And Paul once said to me, Phil, if you're not moving forward and if you're not growing, you're as good as going back because everyone else is moving at the same pace. Completely. And that, I get, in a way, is why growth is so important.
And growth can take many forms. I'll give you, without naming clients, I'll give you an example. We have a client selling tech gear, phones and the like. And when we sat down with the client initially, very successful, millions of pounds of sales every year. But the channels from where the sales were derived from, probably about a third through their own website, and the rest through third-party channels such as eBay, such as Amazon, which is great, making sales, fantastic. But those third-party channels attract quite high costs. So our task was, as well as growing sales, can we change the makeup of their sales? Could we put something in place so that we are driving more sales through the website? Because we know it's a high demand product, so that's quite easy on the face of it. But if we find ways for those sales to come through their website and not those third party channels, not only are they making the sales, they're also saving quite high third party costs, meaning more profit, more growth. So growth can take many forms.
Yeah, and just sort of building on that, I probably said it earlier. Growth in 2008 lacked a bit of transparency, which you talked about. Now, what's great is you've got the data behind it, which is really exciting. And I think the other thing where growth's really changed now, and in my opinion, much more so for the better, is that we're starting to see it as moving beyond the sort of the business numbers and performance, if you like, into organisations now much more aware of the growth of their people, and the growth of their brands and their stories and what they stand for. That's the other side of that, which is really exciting.
And I think in a way, from my perspective, far too often I think businesses say, well, we want to grow, so we'll just increase the sales. And it's like, well, what if your costs are way out of control? What's the point of increasing? I don't often think that people stop and really work out and really think about what growth is, what it means, what it looks like, and ultimately whether or not that's going to be right for the business at any one stage. But you're right, suddenly, and it's a really good thing, the well-being of staff has become very, very important, because as we all know, even as business people, if you haven't got good staff, you can't run a business.
Yeah, where we're at the moment, and we're at a really interesting growth stage, aren't we? I mean, if you look at the forward forecast for what the country's going to do, that's quite interesting. I don't want to get political about it, but what you have to be able to do is we do it for our business, assume responsibility for how you're going to grow in a tough environment. And the people thing in there is really interesting. I'm spending quite a lot of my time actually working with clients who are saying to me, hey, look, we need Fuel's help here, but that isn't necessarily about getting in new customers and clients. It's about getting new people in. Getting people in the recruitment market we're in at the moment is the biggest barrier to our growth. So how do we do that differently to grow the business? And typically that wouldn't have happened years.
And do you find that clients, not necessarily the clients that you've got, but maybe clients that you probably will meet over the next 6 months, do they know what growth is? Have they got an idea of it, or rather they just don't know how to get it?
I think it's more the latter. I think they don't know necessarily how to get sustainable growth. People can invest money and drive a growth agenda to a point by investing in sort of marketing channels and everything else. But if you don't have the right infrastructure in place, it will fall down on itself. So it's making sure the business is growing at the right pace, as Martyn alluded to, with the right people who buy into the business and its aims and its aspirations. All those things have never been more important than they are today, and they all combine together to help build and develop that growth.
And I think that's where we see ourselves. Our sort of our new positioning, if you like, is about being a growth partner agency, and that's about us sitting with our clients as trusted advisors and not just concentrating on the marketing. So, with that, typically we're getting involved at a more strategic level. In what we say, it's not about being a marketing agency. It's part consultancy business. It's part tech business. I'm sure we'll talk about some of those examples shortly too.
I mean, I also should explain that the seagulls that you can probably hear in the background, they're obviously just approving with full approval of what you're saying about
like
growth.
Yeah.
I like a bit of background ambient noise. It makes it feel real, which is what this is trying to be. So, look, can we? I mean, just on the growth side of things, do you mind if I ask you a couple of quick fire questions
Go for it.
about
Go
sort
ahead.
of where we are? And what
Steve
I'm
first.
going to do, well, no, I get to make that call. What I'll do is I'm going to ask the question is to both of you. So, but one will answer first, and one will answer first. And so I will ask you first on this first question, Steve. But Martyn, that means you've got a couple of minutes to think of something really intelligent. So in theory, your answer should be better than his.
Right,
okay,
go for
so
it.
there's 3 questions in total. So let's do the first one to start off. Best example. This is for you, Steve. You in a minute, Martyn. Best example of growth for a fuel client. Now, we're not mentioning names, but you can talk about the general sphere.
Yeah, I think the best example of growth is clear, tangible growth. I've talked about sort of affiliate marketing channels earlier. We have a whole plethora of clients working those channels. Our team work really hard to connect our clients to the right affiliates, and the growth every single client without fail has seen has been phenomenal. So it's a real tangible, it's really easy trackable, it's really easy traceable. So for me, I come from a sales background, so core sales is at the heart of my mantra. I want to see our clients get more sales, and those channels have proved fantastic successful for our clients. So I would say best success story off the bat would be our clients working those channels really well.
Yeah, and actually just to expand upon that bit a little bit, we are talking clients here that Steve's talking about that have come to us that are doing tens of thousands of pounds, who are now doing many millions of pounds.
Right.
Now,
Wow.
That isn't all to do with us, not by any stretch. It's to do with the people who lead the business and their growth mindset and ambition. But those are the kind of figures we're talking about, and we're really proud of.
Well, let's be honest. That's big growth.
It's game changing. It is game changing for those clients, and we're very proud of that.
Yeah. Well, even just to be part of it,
of course,
is important. Martyn, what's your response to that one?
Well, his was a very good answer, so it's tough to beat.
No, you can't get out of it with that.
But actually, no. I think probably the best example of growth that I've seen and that we've worked on is working with a client who hasn't yet started up their business. This is pre-startup.
Okay. Yeah.
This is a meeting over a few beers and some conceptual ideas about how do we get this to reality. Then being appointed to start in that startup phase, getting involved with the strategy, getting the branding right, getting the market position right, and I can think of a client that we started with in the very early days, exactly in that phase, really rewarding work. Is now a multi-million-pound company, and that's probably the best example I can give to you.
It's a shame we're not naming names, because that is a really good example. Because I know exactly who you're talking about. So you're talking about getting people, in building terms, up out of the foundations, up out of the ground, and moving on to the future.
It's the type of work that we will really kind of lick our lips about, because it's really exciting work. You can buy into it emotively quite easily, and that really excites us. And
actually, just on that, the bigger point there for me is we do love that startup and success story bit, but we've put our money where our mouth is with a couple of those clients. So we've made investments into what they're doing because we believe in what they're doing. Okay. So great example of our mindset and our approach to growth, if you like, is there's nothing better than putting your money where your mouth is there?
The living embodiment of that phrase, the literal version of it. So well done. Right, let's move on to the next question. So Martyn, unfortunately, you're up first for this one. So Steve, you've got a bit of time now to think about. And for the third one, we'll do a coin toss. Best bit of advice you'd give about growth to anyone?
I think I get a bit of a theme coming through here, and what I'm seeing at the moment is around one mindset. Let's not talk ourselves into things are really tough. Things are tough, but the fact is, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And the other bit is growth is much more than just the numbers. It's the people It's the communities you work within, and so it's much more rounded. So if you look at it in a much more rounded approach, there will be opportunities in each of those areas to grow. So
I get that. No, that sounds good. And Steve, your
I think to define what growth looks like, to define what success looks like, I think that's really important. I think it's to have a real understanding of where you are right now and what it is you're looking to achieve for your business, and over what timescales, and put a plan in place. As I said earlier about sustainable growth, put a sustainable plan in place that will allow you to achieve those objectives. They need to be achievable, they need to be realistic, and they need to be timed so that you know you're on that journey, or you're ahead of the journey, or you're behind whatever it may be. You need to be honest with yourself, and ask yourself the questions we do every quarter. We'll sit down and we ask ourselves some challenging questions. We're on a journey. Are we ahead of the game? Are we behind the game? What areas are we not quite aligned, or whatever it may be? Because if you're honest, you can deal with that. If you can, don't just put a nice little plan together, put it on your bookcase and never look at it again, because you would never achieve it.
I think that's one thing, isn't it? But also, I mean, something that we talk about quite a lot is it's rarely a straight line. Yeah. So, anybody can put a spreadsheet of good numbers together, and that can help guide you, but you will have setbacks along the way. All businesses will. So it's about actually then having that culture to be able to sort of look each other in the eye, be accountable to each other, and all of that kind of stuff.
And I think what often happens is people come up with plans and great ideas, and they put those plans, strategies and great ideas in the bottom drawer and don't revisit them. And I guess what you're saying is
happens a lot.
Coming back to the table, looking at, did it work? Did it happen? Is it measurable?
And stuff happens, doesn't it? Stuff happens that you can't ever foresee. COVID as an example, things that a business just can't plan for. So you have to be able to be adept and react. But there are still some great examples of businesses that have
absolutely
grown.
Well, I've got one last question that I'm going to flip the metaphorical coin, ping, and see what I did there as a sound effect.
Well, I haven't seen what you did there.
Work. Let's go for you again, Steve, and then Martyn can end up. What does growth look like for you personally?
That's a great question, actually.
Thank you.
I think growth from a business point of view, we'll have our own growth agenda. So that is, that will be the development of our people and the journey that we're on for Fuel. And we've got some really exciting things that I hope, if this podcast becomes a regular thing, that we'll be able to talk about for our business in the months to come. I'm blessed. I have aims and aspirations that I want to achieve myself, which would be a part, of my personal growth. I'm doing a 2-year training course at the minute, on a sales mastery course, because I want to, continue to invest in myself and grow my abilities. So it's having your feet on the floor, understanding where you are, and plotting that journey, really. So on a personal level, I do that with my lovely new wife, and on a business level, I do that with Martyn and my fellow business partners, and just plan for a happy, healthy life.
Well, that sounds about right. Martyn, what about you?
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, you're under pressure now.
Some similar bits, I suppose. I suppose we're both reaching, heading towards the half-century mark. I'm, you know, a relatively new granddad. So, the little man is 6 months old. So it gets you thinking, I suppose, in a different way. But we will continue to grow Fuel. We've got a fantastic amount of talent in the business. They always say to hire people who are smarter than you, and we've hired a few of those for sure. So I think we've got a really good future. But the other side of what we do in terms of fueling growth for clients is our internal bit is fueling growth for our people, and we do that consistently. And seeing people grow and continue to grow is massive for us. He's exactly the same on it. And also, you know, I'm really proud of the people who have been at Fuel and gone on to do other things. You know, I keep in contact with the vast majority of them, and some of them are, you know, doing some great stuff all around the globe at the minute, which is, you know, I'm proud
I love
of
the
that
fact
too.
that you've teamed me up nicely, because my son is coming in for his work placement in 2 weeks' time with you. I can assure you, you will not be hiring someone brighter than yourself. He's not that. He's a good job. He's good looking, I tell you. But no, thank you for that. I do appreciate that. They were good answers to very ordinary questions. So look, the time has now come to sort of wrap this whole thing up. I do appreciate your time. I think it's worked well in terms of a relaxed approach to talking about growth and also kind of a bit of background in that. I'm hoping that we've got some people lined up or teed up for the very next one that we hopefully will be doing fairly soon.
Yeah.
I hope that we're going to scare some of your clients by getting them in as well.
We will.
I also think it works very well when you've got 3 people in a room, not just 2. And I certainly could never be allowed to or be left in a room on my own to do this. It's impossible to do. So you always need to have people to talk to. I'm blessed in the fact that as I've been talking to you today, you realise that you two know this industry inside out. You're very good at it. And I actually think you come across very naturally on this podcast as well. So thank you very much for your time. That is pretty much it, I think, for our podcast today. Unless there's anything else you have a dying ambition to sort of mention or talk about. No?
No.
Not really.
Not for me.
Just to say, you know, the growth agenda takes many forms, and hopefully through future podcasts we'll be having some great guests who will be able to talk about their own personal journeys. And hopefully be, you know, very interesting to people that want to listen to it.
Exactly. And just before I go and I wrap up, just touching on the wedding just again. As I mentioned, I sat next to your wonderful wife, Martyn, and the bottle of champagne that you dropped on our table. It was very nice of you to do that. But your wife spilled half of it down me, and I've still got a dry cleaning bill. So do I have to send it to you, or shall I send it to accounts here at Fuel? I don't know which one to do.
Accounts.
I shall send it. I shall mark it up.
It will not get signed off.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in to the Fueling Growth podcast. I look forward to doing another one. And thank you very much for your time. It's been insightful.
Thanks, Phil.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.